Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Yeah, while you were networking, I was having butterflies waiting for you in here. So welcome, and I'd like to thank Tradepass. I feel like I know Radhika. We've been talking ever since, for organizing this very nice session. Next time, please give me the first slot, because all I wanted to say has been said, so I'm not really sure. Maybe I could just get my token and sit. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. It's a nice session. I'm also learning a lot. And this topic, I think we don't give it the seriousness that it deserves. We need to focus more on cybersecurity, because when we fail and all our operations are in the cyber world, then it means everything else is going to fail. All right? So there's a comment here that I've read and reread several times, and I'll read it word for word. Cyberspace has been touted as one of the most significant intellectual challenges in this millennium, because it's not clear who is in charge or who will be in charge in the future. A while back, we looked at cybersecurity as a technical issue, but today we discuss cybersecurity at the very highest levels, both international and nationally. It is a security challenge. This is a quote attributed to the Zurich Center for Cybersecurity Studies in 2018. So it is against this backdrop that we need to discuss cyber issues, right? It is not a small matter, it is not a laughing matter. It's a very serious matter, right? Now this was picked from the World Economic Forum, who gave the report of risks, global risks in 2020. This was at the height of COVID. And if you look at the top right corner, you'll see that cyber attacks are ranked very highly, right? Cyber attacks are ranked very highly, together with water crisis and human-made environmental disasters, natural disasters, okay? So it means that we are onto something which we need to give proper attention to, all right? The likelihood of the risk, we have data fraud or theft and cyber attacks being in the top 10. As for impact, we have information infrastructure breakdown being also in the top 10, same as cyber attacks. So as cybersecurity professionals, as ICT practitioners, it means that we need to be aware of the enormous responsibility that has been placed on our shoulders, because we are supposed to secure our infrastructure, we are supposed to secure our applications. You remember the CISOs from the banking sector who are here just before the break. It means they are protecting people's money. They are protecting people's pensions. They are protecting people's wealth, because we count wealth in terms of money. So it means that that responsibility is enormous, all right? Going back, as I'm looking at this in terms of our nation and national security, you've probably read about the Estonian attack in 2007. Now, Estonia is one of those countries that is very digitally advanced, so that they almost do everything online, up to and including their elections, all right? So in 2007, there was an attack that has never been fully attributed. It is said one of their big neighbors, who's causing problems even now, was responsible for that. And it meant no communication, no banking transaction. You couldn't even be identified because they have digital IDs for a few days until this came back. Now, as we gear towards automation, as we gear towards digitizing everything, it means it's a double-edged sword. While we'll make everything efficient and fast, it means that if a wrong person gets access to our digital infrastructure and our digital systems, then we will be crippled, okay? If you have digital IDs, you will not even exist. They can wipe your existence through the computers. Of course, we've seen the Iranian nuclear plant. It was shut down remotely. And this means all those systems using these industrial SCADA systems can be manipulated from afar, right? We know of our utility operators, they use SCADA to run some of the, utility operations. It means somebody can be able to access that and be able to mess you up big time, right? There are cities that operate automated traffic lights, right? Water distribution, electricity distribution. Of course, in terms of information, we are all aware of WikiLeaks, which I think is still available, and they still produce more recent information even now about governments, right? Then there was the 2021 attack on the oil pipeline in the USA. And they had to track fuel, something that they were not used to. I know in most parts of Africa, we are used to seeing fuel being transported using trucks and trailers. But for them, they had to go back to this after a long time because they were used to using their oil pipeline. But somebody, also from somewhere in Europe, messed up the operations of their oil pipeline. Okay? And it took a while to be able to restore that. So, cyber attacks on infrastructure are the fifth top risk in 2020, with an estimated cost of about $10.5 trillion on cyber crimes by the year 2025. Yeah, that's about half the GDP of the US. So you can see it's something major. It is big. And as Ajijola had said, in this problem lies opportunity. It depends on how you see it, how you seize it, and how you position yourself going forward. All right? Coming to Africa, we can be able to see a lot of cybercrime activity distributed, notably in the Southern Africa, in East Africa, we have West Africa, and North Africa. The dark areas are the ones that have a lot of attacks or attempted attacks. In fact, in a report by the Kenyan firm, Seriano, they say Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, Morocco account for half of the threats or attacks that are directed towards African nations. That may only mean that there's a lot of cyber activity, there are a lot of systems that are in place in those countries. And so the cyber criminals are alive to the fact that we have a lot of automation that is not secured to world-class standards. As has been said by the previous speakers, we are not designing our systems with security from the start, right? That means they are vulnerable. It is easy to take advantage of them. And of course, the other things, the literacy levels, right? And the fact that possibly we in Africa have had a very steep learning curve. Other countries may have had time to be able to, automate. Yeah, they've gone through the various cycles. For Africa, I think we are joining this automation bandwagon when we already have the fourth industrial revolution. So we have to do what others did over 50 or so years, maybe in 5 or 10 years, to be able to communicate, to be able to be at par, to be able to be included in the list of countries that are automated. So we have to be alive to these challenges, and we have to ensure that as we do our things, resilience, the national resilience, you remember the Estonian story, is at the back of our minds. All right? This also had been mentioned earlier, right? The Global Cybersecurity Index that is released occasionally by the ITU. And you can see in terms of ranking, no African country is in the top 10. And you can see that top 10 list is more than 10, actually, because several countries tie, right? Sorry. Right? Oh, thank you. Yeah, right? Mauritius, which is the best ranked in this list, comes in at number 17, all right? The other list is basically for Africa, looking at the African countries. Of course, we have Mauritius, Tanzania, Ghana. You can be able to see the way they are ranked. And as part of the resilience, we would need to use what the ITU gives us. They are looking at, there's some legal environment. I know many countries are now trying to put in the data protection laws. We have cybercrime laws. We have critical infrastructure protection, right? The technical environment, the organization, whether you have the certs in place, whether you have an authority to deal with cybersecurity, the capacity development. This comes, it's a big thing which I think we take for granted. The training of the specialists, the training and awareness of the general populace, all comes in under capacity development, and cooperation, which was very ably summed under cyber diplomacy. You cannot be able to do this alone. You need to be in touch with other allies, like-minded countries, to know what is happening, what are the challenges, what direction is the ICT field going towards, so that you are always ahead. In any case, you'll find that the cyber criminals reside in other jurisdictions. So you'll need this cooperation between governments to be able to deal with the cyber criminals. All right. Still, from that report, in terms of critical infrastructure and resilience, looking at the the NCS is a national cybersecurity strategy, right? We find that in Africa, out of the 44 countries that were polled, only 10 had cyber strategies that address the critical infrastructure and resiliency. That is the dark blue. That color is dark blue, isn't it? Yeah? Yes, that is the one that has 10 in Africa, all right? Yeah, then you can be able to see the majority of them, okay, do not address this. So there's a way in which Africa is a bit slow in adapting to this resiliency, right? And we need to wake up to the fact that most of our critical operations are now online. So the kind of security that we put in the physical world needs to be duplicated in the online arena, so to speak. All right? So the overlapping efforts, and had been mentioned earlier, I won't go much into this. There's the issue of domain coherence. Earlier speakers had talked about using offensive cybersecurity. Now that is one thing that we will need to look at. Oh, this was time, sorry. I thought it was a screensaver. Yeah, we need some education on this. Yeah, we need some offensive cyber power if you are to be resilient. We know that cybersecurity is a function of the general security environment. So we need to treat it as such, right? And then there is the digital backbone that we need to strengthen. In all this, you may be aware that there are several jurisdictions that now have indicated cybersecurity as the fifth domain of warfare, right? It means that they've moved forward, and after land, sea, air, and space, they are now looking at cybersecurity as a real arena of warfare, okay? So it means other jurisdictions are taking the cyber arena very seriously, right? So we need to be able to do that. And as shown in the earlier examples, you can cripple a nation through the cyber arena alone without stepping foot in that nation, all right? So we need a whole of society approach, all right? Gone are the days when government would do its things separately. Industry also works separately, right? You'd need the government, the Ministry of Defense, academia, industry, and industry is very broad. We have both the business, we have the civil society that brings some human rights elements and check on both the business and the government. And we also need allies, where we talked of cooperation and cyber diplomacy. This needs to be in place for us to be able to have a safe cyberspace. And it is instructive to note that most of the cyberspace is in private hands, or the private sector's hands. So we in government need to work very closely with those in the private sector. If you talk of the telcos, yeah, if you talk of the banking sector, right, if you even talk of utilities, many of these have been privatized, right? So they run their own systems, they run their own security. Yet the government does not have oversight over them. So it means that the collaboration has to be taken a notch higher. It has to be formalized if you are to have a resilient nation, right? Because when your utility that is provided by the private sector is taken down, it will not matter that it's not government run. If people cannot get water, or if people cannot do the banking services, to take an example of Kenya, M-Pesa is critical infrastructure, because now an increasing percentage of our transactions, whether person to person or through the banks, goes through the M-Pesa system. It means that if that goes down, then there would be a problem. And Dr. Getao aptly gave the example there. So it means that that has to be looked at as a security concern and not just a business enterprise, right? We need to have plan B. We need to ensure that it is always up and running, all right? So of course, this resilience will be driven by the need for the developing threats. We have proxy actors. We have now malicious cyber as a service. So long as you have money, you can be able to hire people somewhere to be able to break into some system of interest. There are people selling all manner of information and data, right? So long as you have bitcoins, right? The environment is evolving, right? The threat surface from a military perspective is expanding, okay? And then there's the issue of the advancing technology in terms of scale and pace. And this is why we need to work together. Government is always a bit slow, but that will not be allowed. That is not acceptable in the ICT sector, all right? There's the issue of misaligned culture. The lady from, yes, I'm just finishing. The lady from South Africa talked about that, cognitive dissonance, where you know what you should be doing, but you're not doing it, all right? There's the obsolescence of our ICT infrastructure. And because of legacy systems and the way we are building up, right, you'll find that we need to look at that again, all right? So just in terms of cyber resilience, we will need to be able to look at the risk management, protection, detection, and then impact minimization. I think those are self-explanatory. I will not really go into that. We will need to have very secure systems, and this was also alluded to, secure by design, so that you are talking of security, you are thinking of security as you build the system, not as an afterthought. There's the issue of governance, right? And here also the legal framework comes in. We need to be able to have all the laws that will enable us to have a secure cyber environment. There's the people, the culture, the education, right? We need to be able to engage everyone. We need to be able to experiment. Dr. Getao said here very well, we should not just be recipients, we should also be at the forefront. And of course, the issue of diplomacy, cooperation, we can learn a lot. We don't have to experience everything, right? We can learn a lot from our allies, right? So remaining resilient will require constant appraisal of our adversaries and ourselves, all right? This cyber strategy needs to be part of the grand strategy of any nation, right? Bwana Hakim talked of the college where colonels go before they become brigadiers. I think in Nigeria they call it war college, right? Here we call it defense college, National Defense College. And one of the things they teach there is about the grand strategy. That's what the nation aspires, what its risks and constraints are, what its outlook is in total. And so, for any modern nation, cyber security must be part of its grand strategy going forward, or else they'll be able to suffer great setbacks going forward. You've seen what teenagers with a laptop in a garage can do, what they can access, right? So it means if you don't have this cybersecurity as part of your grand strategy and you're not putting in the effort to be able to protect your ecosystem, then you are a sitting duck and it will not be well, right? And we've seen in the cyber world, it is so difficult to attribute attacks, right? It may be very difficult to be able to, pinpoint who is responsible. So we need to protect it before it happens. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Well, let's appreciate them. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause. A better one. All right? Yeah. Keep going.
I think you need to do cash backing for a better applause. Yes. Some M-Pesa should be transferred to members of the audience, and you will get a better applause.
That's why the iPhone is.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well done.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you.